Chapter 1. The Clockmaker's Demise. It began with a moment of silence shattered by the revelation of a mysterious death. The renowned clockmaker, whose intricate mechanisms had long fascinated the citizens, was declared dead in his own workshop. His demise carried an air of enigma that would soon unravel into a labyrinth of clues and contradictions. An unexpected missive, written in an elegant yet trembling hand, had arrived at the door of Sherlock Holmes. The note spoke of despair and urgency, informing the detective that the clockmaker had been found lifeless, with a suggestion that events were not as straightforward as they appeared. Holmes, known for his uncanny ability to discern truth from illusion, felt immediately drawn into a case where every tick of a timepiece promised to reveal secrets hidden beneath layers of misdirection. Holmes contemplated the perplexing circumstances with a mind ever hungry for puzzles. The note hinted at a covert sabotage, a scheme designed to cast blame upon an unsuspecting apprentice. As Holmes mulled over the contents, he recalled the clockmaker's long and illustrious legacy of ingenious craftsmanship and secret designs. There was an unmistakable aura that suggested the tragedy might be a carefully constructed tapestry of deception rather than an ordinary death. The clocks speak a language of their own, a language that conceals the truth beneath layers of artifice, he remarked softly, his measured tone echoing the confidence of one who had witnessed the interplay of fate and precision time after time. The investigation commenced with the arrival of the body. Though no elaborate description of the surroundings was necessary, every detail of the clockmaker's demise resonated with significance. The array of meticulously arranged timepieces all exhibited subtle irregularities, as if each had been intentionally set to misdirect any casual observer. Holmes's keen eyes noted that these deviations were not random, but deliberate modifications meant to send a hidden message. In the quiet aftermath, he declared, "In the precision of these mechanisms lies the key to an elaborate design, one that someone has manipulated to obfuscate the real narrative." At the center of the storm stood the clockmaker's apprentice, a reserved yet perceptive individual whose life now hung in the balance of suspicion. The apprentice recalled the day he had first been introduced to the delicate art of crafting gears and cogs. It was a day marked by promise and the silent intensity of a mentor whose every word carried the weight of genius. He remembered distinctly the clockmaker's parting words before death had descended on the workshop. "Every tick bears a secret. Every tock conceals a truth." Those words now haunted him, as he struggled to understand how loyalty could be twisted into a tool of betrayal. Holmes set about examining every shred of evidence embedded within the clockmaker's creations. He catalogued each anomaly with the precision of a master craftsman, noting the slight irregularities in the harmonies of the gears and the rhythmic imbalances in the pendulums. "These imperfections are too systematic to be mere accidents," he observed, "and they appear to be the imprints of a mind that continues to speak even after death." His investigation soon led him to a series of cryptic messages inscribed along mechanical blueprints and subtly etched on the faces of timepieces, a language that demanded both intellect and intuition to decipher. As Holmes delved deeper, the inspector entrusted him with decoding a puzzle that transcended the ordinary. It became apparent that the clockmaker had left behind clues as a deliberate misdirection, a challenge to those who dared to pursue the truth. The apprentice, whose behavior had grown increasingly erratic under the weight of suspicion, maintained that he had faithfully adhered to his mentor's teachings. Yet circumstantial evidence pointed to a scenario where he might have been manipulated into a corner. Holmes was all too aware that any misinterpretation of the apprentice's role could lead to a grave miscarriage of justice. In quiet moments of reflection, Holmes recalled the wisdom imparted by his own mentors. The pursuit of truth is fraught with shadows and echoes. One must listen not only to the words spoken, but also to the silence between them. With that in mind, he methodically weighed each clue against the backdrop of human fallibility and hidden agendas. His approach resembled that of a master clockmaker, calibrating the gears of logic and intuition until a complete mechanism of truth was revealed. "In the silent symphony of the clocks," he declared, "every imperfection is a note in the overture of deception." Suspicion continued to loom over the character of the apprentice. Although his reputation had long been unblemished, the sudden and tragic events had cast him as a potential culprit. He recalled the hushed conversations between the clockmaker and his peers, moments when hints of rivalry and concealed ambition had surfaced. Some acquaintances had spoken in measured tones of envy, suggesting that the clockmaker's innovations might have inadvertently spurred others to replicate his designs for their own gain. "I had always believed in the sanctity of our craft," the apprentice confessed in a tremulous voice. "But now I find myself ensnared in a web of betrayal I can scarcely comprehend." Holmes' meticulous inquiry led him to scrutinize the clockmaker's workshop records. The logs, filled with detailed entries chronicling daily progress and minute adjustments to every project, became a treasure trove of clues. In one curious entry, Holmes noted an unusual frequency adjustment on a clock that had never before exhibited such behavior. Though minor in appearance, this anomaly suggested deliberate tampering, a calculated move meant to obscure the natural order of the mechanism. "I suspect this irregularity was intentionally embedded as a signal," Holmes mused, "a subtle declaration of involvement in a scheme much larger than a simple act of violence." Further examination revealed that several timepieces bore similar deliberate deviations. In isolation, each error might have seemed trivial, but collectively they formed a pattern of misdirection, a deliberate scheme aimed at misleading both the authorities and a perceptive detective. "These anomalies are too systematic to be the result of chance," Holmes stated. "They are the imprints of a plan laid out by someone who sought to control the narrative even beyond death." In the early days of the investigation, the relationship between Holmes and the apprentice grew increasingly complex. The young man, burdened by the weight of suspicion, sought comfort in the measured counsel of Holmes. A man whose unyielding dedication to uncovering the truth offered a beacon of hope amid overwhelming adversity. "The apprentice," Holmes observed quietly, "appears entangled in a web of deceit spun by the very hand that once guided him." His words conveyed both sympathy and a steely resolve to uncover the entire truth. Amid the steady progression of clues, whispers of an alternative narrative began to emerge. Several sources intimated that the clockmaker had been locked in a rivalry with a formidable adversary, a rival whose ambition had driven him to extreme measures in his relentless pursuit of innovation and notoriety. In discreet conversations, some acquaintances recalled that the clockmaker's designs were often met with immediate imitation, accompanied by subtle modifications that allowed his rival to claim originality. Holmes found this possibility intriguing. "Every piece of evidence seems to be a cog in a grand mechanism," he remarked, "one that extends far beyond a simple act of violence and into the realm of calculated rivalry." Among the many clues, one cryptic inscription captured Holmes' attention. A series of numerical sequences and symbols that defied immediate interpretation. Discovered on the underside of an imposing timepiece, the inscription appeared both a signature and a challenge. "The clockmaker's hand is never idle," Holmes noted, "and it is this very hand that has left us a riddle within a riddle." This enigma beckoned him deeper into the clockmaker's ingenious mind, a mind that reveled in puzzles and the thrill of intellectual combat. The apprentice, now a reluctant partner in this unfolding drama, began to reveal fragments of his own recollections. He recalled moments when his mentor extolled the virtues of time itself, emphasizing that every mechanism bore the mark of life's inexorable passage. "Time is the canvas upon which our fates are painted," the clockmaker had once said, his voice imbued with reverence. Such words, once a source of inspiration, now carried an ominous quality as they resonated with the stark finality of death. "I remember a day when he hinted at a secret that would redefine our understanding of time," the apprentice confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "I dismissed it then, but now I fear that secret might be the key to unraveling this mystery." The investigation took an unexpected turn when Holmes unearthed a series of letters exchanged between the clockmaker and an unknown correspondent. Rich with metaphor and veiled implications, these letters spoke of a hidden alliance and an impending reckoning. One letter in particular alluded to a betrayal that threatened the very integrity of their craft and expressed a resolve to right an injustice. I fear that our genius may be exploited by those who fail to appreciate its beauty. Read one passage, its words carrying both melancholy and defiance. Holmes considered these communications carefully, realizing that they hinted at a conspiracy that extended well beyond the confines of the workshop and into the realm of industrial espionage. As Holmes pieced together the mosaic of clues, a recurring theme began to emerge. A theme of calculated risk and deliberate sacrifice. The clockmaker, it seemed, had orchestrated his apparent demise as a means to expose a deeper treachery. The clockmaker has mastered the art of timing, Holmes remarked thoughtfully, not only in his craft, but in orchestrating his own final act. Every deliberate anomaly in his work is a note in a symphony of deception. This thought cast the case in a new light, suggesting that the tragedy might not be a murder at all, but a performance. A carefully executed act designed to reveal a rival's covert exploitation of his designs. In the midst of these revelations, a subtle shift occurred in the dynamics between the key players. The apprentice, once painted solely as a suspect, began to emerge as a figure of potential innocence caught in a grander design. His every word and action were re-examined with a mixture of skepticism and hope. He is not the villain the evidence seems to suggest, Holmes observed, but a pawn in a much larger game, a game meticulously set in motion by a mind that danced between genius and deception. The apprentice's internal turmoil became evident as he struggled with the implications of the clues that now pointed to a meticulously orchestrated charade. In the days that followed, Holmes dedicated himself to scrutinizing every minute detail of the clockmaker's life. He revisited the archival records, poring over manuscripts, schematics, and personal journals that once belonged to the late craftsman. Each document whispered secrets of innovation and treachery, as if the clockmaker's very soul had been infused into the ink and paper. Every minute detail in these records is like a cog in a larger mechanism, Holmes declared. They reveal not just technical information, but a philosophy, one where the manipulation of time becomes the ultimate form of art. Holmes then turned his attention to those who had shared the clockmaker's world. He interviewed former apprentices, business associates, and even distant rivals. One such confidant recalled, "The clockmaker was a man of unmatched brilliance, yet his relentless pursuit of perfection often bred envy. I recall him saying that perfection, when pursued too fervently, can lead even the noblest intentions astray." This testimony resonated with Holmes, who knew that brilliance often attracted both admiration and covert malice. A name soon surfaced in conversation, a figure known as Mr. Alastair. Spoken of in hushed and cautious tones, Mr. Alastair had long harboured ambitions to not only replicate, but to surpass the clockmaker's ingenious designs. It is possible, Holmes mused in one reflective moment, that Mr. Alastair's ambition drove him to exploit the clockmaker's trust, using those very innovations as a foundation for his own secret endeavours. Although direct evidence was scarce, the possibility of a hidden rivalry loomed large in Holmes's mind. The threads of suspicion further converged on the apprentice. His recollections revealed that on one particular day, his mentor had spoken of a crucial moment in their work, a moment when a seemingly innocuous adjustment would later prove to be the cornerstone of an elaborate design. I remember him saying, "Every gear must fit perfectly, for even the smallest deviation could echo through eternity," the apprentice recalled, his voice trembling with the weight of the memory. To Holmes, this poetic yet cryptic statement hinted that the clockmaker had planned contingencies that reached far beyond the immediate concerns of a mechanical device. Determined to unravel every facet of the mystery, Holmes revisited the mechanical blueprints and designs carefully archived by the clockmaker. Each blueprint revealed hidden layers, a series of calculated modifications that, when assembled in the proper sequence, formed a code visible only to those with the insight to decipher it. These documents, Holmes stated, are not merely technical records. They are an embodiment of a philosophy where the precision of machinery is interwoven with the fluidity of time itself. This understanding lent the case a metaphysical dimension, suggesting that the heart of the mystery lay as much in the clockmaker's worldview as in the physical evidence of his workshop. In the midst of these investigations, Holmes found himself engaged in long hours of conversation with the beleaguered apprentice. Their dialogues, rich with both doubt and clarity, forged a bond born of a shared commitment to unearthing the truth. "We must remain vigilant," Holmes counseled during one such exchange, "for the truth is often hidden in the minutiae, the subtle ticks and tocks that most overlook. In every misaligned gear and every whispered inscription, there is a clue." The apprentice, inspired by Holmes' unwavering dedication, began to see his own role in a new light. He was no longer merely a suspect, but a crucial participant in a grand experiment that challenged the boundaries of loyalty and ingenuity. Slowly, a theory began to take shape in Holmes' mind. Revisiting the detailed workshop logs, he noticed that a series of timepieces had been modified in ways that seemed arbitrary at first glance. However, when considered collectively, these modifications formed a sequence that mirrored a well-known mathematical progression. "It is evident," Holmes remarked, "that the clockmaker employed a deliberate code, a cipher meant to be unraveled only by those capable of discerning the hidden order in chaos." The realization sparked excitement in Holmes' analytical mind, for it suggested that every minute adjustment was a deliberate piece of a grand design. In a reflective moment, Holmes admitted that the complexity of the case transcended the immediate question of guilt or innocence. "Time," he mused, "is our greatest ally and our most formidable adversary." The clockmaker, who devoted his life to capturing its essence, may have orchestrated his own demise as the ultimate test, a performance designed not to end in tragedy, but to reveal a deeper truth. This idea, both unsettling and ingenious, took root in his thoughts and began to inform every subsequent inquiry. One element of the investigation, the cryptic inscription on the underside of a grand timepiece, soon became a linchpin in Holmes' evolving theory. Initially dismissed as decorative, the inscription revealed itself as a series of numbers and symbols that corresponded with unusual adjustments logged in the workshop. "It is not simply a message," Holmes asserted during a quiet moment of discovery, "but a key, a cipher that unlocks the hidden narrative behind every anomaly we have observed." With painstaking care, he began decoding the inscription, aligning it with records and recollections, until a coherent sequence emerged that spoke of both art and calculated subterfuge. In parallel, the apprentice's inner turmoil deepened. He confessed, with a voice thick with regret and confusion, "I never imagined that my loyalty would be tested in such a manner. My mentor was my guide, and now I find myself accused of a crime I cannot fathom." His words resonated with Holmes, who saw in the young man not a willing conspirator but a victim of a masterful ruse, a pawn in an elaborate game designed to test even the most discerning of minds. As the pieces of evidence gradually converged, Holmes began to suspect that the clockmaker's death was not the consequence of an external crime, but a meticulously staged event. Every adjustment, every cryptic note, every carefully logged second points to a singular possibility, he declared in one of his many contemplative sessions. The clockmaker may have engineered his own demise as a way to expose the covert ambitions of a rival, and in doing so, he has set a trap for those who would misinterpret the truth. His measured tone carried both admiration for the audacity of the act and a solemn recognition of the risks it entailed. In the quiet solitude of his reflections, Holmes recalled several subtle hints dropped by his late mentor. There had been fleeting remarks about the inevitability of renewal, cryptic comments on the cyclical nature of existence, and an almost imperceptible smile that hinted at secret knowledge. Perhaps, Holmes ventured softly, the clockmaker intended this entire affair as a test, not only of my abilities, but of the very principles that govern truth and deception. This notion, once remote and unlikely, now assumed a tangible shape in his mind, suggesting that every tick and tock was part of an intricate design that spanned both life and artifice. Their partnership deepened as Holmes and the apprentice continued to exchange insights late into long evenings, filled with hushed conversation. In every case, Holmes remarked during one reflective pause, there exists a single thread that, when pulled, unravels the entire tapestry of deceit. We must find that thread and follow it, no matter how winding the path may be. The apprentice, drawing strength from Holmes' unyielding resolve, agreed in a quiet yet determined tone, I will trust in this quest. I will do everything in my power to honor my mentor's legacy and clear the murky veil that now surrounds us. In the final moments of these initial investigations, as all the evidence began to point toward an astonishing possibility, Holmes' thoughts crystallized into a bold conclusion. It appears that the clockmaker, he murmured with a blend of awe and trepidation, has not fallen victim to foul play, but has, in fact, orchestrated his own apparent demise. Every anomaly in his work, every encoded message, and every recorded adjustment was part of a carefully constructed performance designed to expose a rival's treachery and to test the limits of my own deductive abilities. This revelation, both unsettling and brilliant, signaled the end of the first stage of the investigation and set the stage for a confrontation with a hidden adversary whose identity remained shrouded in mystery. As the first chapter of this intricate saga drew to a close, Holmes and the apprentice found themselves on the threshold of further revelations. Their hearts were heavy with the knowledge that the case was far from a simple matter of clearing a name. It was a challenge to the very fabric of ingenuity and a test of the relentless march of time. We stand on the precipice of a truth that defies the ordinary, Holmes intoned, his voice imbued with quiet determination. The clockmaker's riddle is not solved by the mere passage of time, but by the courage to confront the intricacies of fate itself. In the quiet aftermath of these discoveries, the evidence had woven itself into a tapestry that promised further mysteries yet to be revealed. Every tick of a clock, every measured second, had become a reminder that the legacy of the clockmaker was a living enigma, a challenge to those with the audacity to seek truth even in the face of overwhelming deception. As Holmes whispered to himself in a moment of solitary resolve, time reveals all secrets to those who dare to listen. Both he and the apprentice understood that their journey had only just begun. Thus ended the first chapter of The Clockmaker's Riddle, a chapter of meticulous observations, philosophical musings, and a mystery that defied ordinary explanation. With minds sharpened by the relentless pursuit of truth and hearts steeled against the tides of deception, Holmes and his newfound ally prepared themselves to venture into the next phase of their investigation. Every clue, every subtle inscription, and every deliberate misalignment in the clockmaker's work beckoned them onward into a realm where time itself was both a silent witness and an active participant in the grand design. The case had transformed from a simple tragedy into an elaborate performance, an invitation to decipher a riddle crafted by a master of both mechanics and misdirection. The promise of uncovering the true adversary, the one who had exploited the clockmaker's genius for personal gain, hung in the balance. And as the echoes of that final fateful moment resonated in the quiet determination of both detective and apprentice, they stepped forward into a future where every passing second carried the potential for revelation and retribution. Chapter 2. The Unmasking of Deception. Holmes' mind whirled with the intricate dance of clues and subtle inconsistencies that had emerged from the clockmaker's workshop. In the quiet hours that followed the initial revelations, his thoughts remained fixed on the deliberate misalignments and cryptic inscriptions. The apprentice, once burdened by despair and suspicion, now found himself a reluctant partner in an investigation that deepened with every passing second. Holmes recalled his earlier words. Every adjustment, every cryptic note, every recorded second points to a singular possibility. Now, as the evidence continued to accumulate, That singular possibility began to take on a form that challenged conventional understanding. Holmes methodically retraced his steps from the workshop, revisiting every ledger entry and every subtle deviation recorded in the mechanical logs. In a moment of reflective clarity, he murmured, "The clockmaker's genius did not end with his supposed demise. He left behind a signature in the minutiae." With each careful comparison of the blueprints and the recorded timepieces, a pattern emerged, one that hinted not at a simple murder or accident, but at an act of self-orchestration. His suspicions swirled around the possibility that the clockmaker's death had been staged, and the apprentice, though innocent, had been ensnared in a web of misdirection. The investigation deepened as Holmes and the apprentice began to cross-examine testimonies and re-examine the minutiae of every recorded inscription. The apprentice, though visibly shaken by the relentless pressure of suspicion, contributed with a quiet determination that surprised even himself. "I have always revered my mentor's wisdom," the apprentice recalled in a measured tone during one of their many exchanges. "And now I must trust that wisdom to guide me out of this labyrinth." His words resonated with Holmes, who recognized that the young man's inner strength was as crucial to the investigation as the evidence laid out in mechanical precision. Holmes's inquiries led him to re-interview individuals who had once admired the clockmaker's work. He encountered subtle hints that suggested a rival ambition lurking behind the veneer of admiration. In hushed tones, a long-time colleague admitted, "There was always a tension in his interactions with Mr. Allister, whose envy was palpable beneath the surface of polite conversation." Such confessions, though sparse and veiled in caution, added a new layer to the intricate puzzle. Holmes' inner monologue grew increasingly animated as he reflected, if the clockmaker's designs were coveted by a rival, then perhaps the true motive behind this grand performance was not malice, but the revelation of a hidden betrayal. In the midst of these revelations, a peculiar discovery stirred Holmes's analytical mind. He uncovered a small, seemingly inconspicuous clock piece that bore markings not found in any other record of the clockmaker's work. Its mechanism, far more sophisticated than any known design, seemed to hint at an innovation that belonged to a mind still active. "This piece," Holmes noted softly while carefully examining it, "speaks of a creative mind that is not yet silenced by death." The discovery ignited a spark of realization that soon spread through the labyrinth of clues. The apprentice, who had previously lamented his perceived betrayal, listened with growing hope as Holmes continued, "There is a truth hidden in the machinery, a truth that may restore your honor and unmask the true architect of this riddle." Days passed in a relentless pursuit of this elusive truth. Holmes, undeterred by the mounting complexity of the case, began to weave together the disparate threads of evidence into a coherent narrative. Each conversation, every recorded anomaly, and the systematic patterns of misdirection gradually revealed a plan far more intricate than any conventional crime. In quiet, measured tones, Holmes confided to the apprentice, "It appears that the clockmaker intended to stage his own death, not as an act of cowardice or despair, but as a masterstroke designed to expose the machinations of a rival who dared to exploit his innovations." The apprentice's eyes widened as the implications settled in. "Are you suggesting," he ventured cautiously, "that my mentor is still among us, hidden in plain sight?" Holmes' reply was deliberate and filled with a quiet certainty. The evidence increasingly points in that direction. Every error, every adjustment was a deliberate move in a game where time itself is the most eloquent witness. Emboldened by the possibility of uncovering the truth, Holmes redoubled his efforts. His investigations led him to a series of clandestine meetings with individuals who had been intimately familiar with the clockmaker's personal philosophies. One such confidant, a retired engineer who had once collaborated with the master craftsman, revealed in a solemn tone, he believed that the test of true genius was not merely in creation, but in the orchestration of events. "I have long suspected that his greatest work was not his inventions, but the grand experiment of deception that now unfolds." These words, echoing in Holmes' mind, transformed the investigation from a mere quest for justice into a profound exploration of ingenuity and human ambition. The narrative of the investigation took a dramatic turn as Holmes discovered inconsistencies in the timeline of events surrounding the clockmaker's supposed death. A careful review of the workshop's logs, combined with the mechanical signatures embedded within the clocks, led him to a startling hypothesis. Time, as we perceive it, has been manipulated, he whispered in awe during one late-night session of analysis. The clockmaker has set the gears in motion to deceive not just the authorities, but even those who would come to mourn him. The apprentice, absorbing every word, felt a stirring of hope that the man he had revered might still be alive. Orchestrating this elaborate test of loyalty and intellect, the breakthrough came when Holmes discovered a series of coded messages hidden within the mechanical adjustments themselves. These messages, when deciphered, revealed a sequence that pointed toward a location, a hidden workshop far from prying eyes. I have uncovered coordinates encoded in the rhythm of the pendulums and the cadence of the ticking, Holmes declared with quiet excitement. They lead to a sanctuary where the clockmaker may have retreated. With this revelation, Holmes and the apprentice set out to confront the mystery head-on, guided by the encoded clues that promised to unveil the truth behind the grand deception. Their journey led them, step by deliberate step, toward the heart of the mystery. In whispered exchanges along the way, Holmes reassured the apprentice, "Trust that every piece of evidence, no matter how small, has its place in this elaborate tapestry of truth. Your mentor's legacy is woven into each detail, and soon the final threads shall reveal the complete picture." The apprentice, fortified by Holmes' unwavering conviction, found his own determination bolstered. "I will follow these clues to the end," he vowed in a tone that conveyed both resolve and vulnerability, "for the sake of my mentor's honor and the truth that must come to light." As they reached the hidden workshop, the duo encountered layers of complexity that defied immediate explanation. The space, though unadorned in description, hummed with the resonance of ingenuity. Every clock, every intricate mechanism, bore the unmistakable signature of the clockmaker's meticulous hand. Holmes' eyes roamed over the collection of timepieces with a mixture of reverence and analytical intensity. "This is the sanctum of genius," he remarked quietly, "a repository of secrets that transcends the boundaries of mere machinery." In that silent communion with the artifacts of a life devoted to precision and art, both detective and apprentice sensed that the final act of this grand performance was imminent. Within the depths of the workshop, hidden behind a cleverly concealed panel, Holmes discovered the final piece of the puzzle, a letter written in the unmistakable hand of the clockmaker himself. The letter, addressed not to any authority, but to the inquisitive mind of Sherlock Holmes, provided the final confirmation of his hypothesis. "I have orchestrated every moment, every tick and tock, as a testament to the power of intellect over convention." The letter read in a measured and confident tone. "My apparent demise was but a performance, designed to test the mettle of those who would claim to be guardians of truth. Let it be known that the apprentice, whose loyalty was never in question, is free of all blame. Rather, he is the willing participant in an experiment that seeks to expose treachery in all its guises." Holmes read these words with a deep, measured understanding, feeling the weight of a master plan that had transcended both time and mortal expectation. The revelation sent shockwaves through the very core of the investigation. The apprentice, his eyes glistening with both relief and remorse for the suffering he had endured, whispered, "So it was all a test. My mentor, who I believed lost, lives on through this grand design." Holmes, his expression a blend of admiration and solemn respect, responded in a measured tone. Indeed, the clockmaker's legacy was never solely in his inventions, but in his unwavering belief that truth must be sought even in the face of deception. He has, through his intricate ruse, not only exonerated you, but also exposed those who sought to exploit his brilliance for their own gain. In that moment, the rival ambitions of Mr. Alastair and his conspirators, long suspected of undermining the clockmaker's work, were laid bare. Holmes's investigations had unearthed further evidence implicating the rival in the manipulation of the mechanical adjustments, a subtle sabotage intended to discredit the clockmaker and seize control of his innovations. Every misaligned gear and every errant inscription served as a marker of treachery, Holmes remarked with quiet indignation. Mr. Alistair's envy drove him to collude with forces that sought to profit from our mentor's genius, and in doing so, he unwittingly played into a trap that only the clockmaker's foresight could have devised. With the evidence irrefutable and the mastermind of the elaborate ruse revealed, Holmes orchestrated a final confrontation. In a carefully arranged meeting that summoned every player to the center of the drama, Holmes addressed the assembly with a voice that blended authority and quiet triumph. "Ladies and gentlemen," he intoned, "we have traversed the labyrinth of deceit and emerged into the light of truth. The clockmaker, whose brilliance transcends the mortal coil, stands among us not as a victim of treachery, but as the architect of this grand experiment." The rival, Mr. Alistair, found himself confronted with the full measure of his own ambitions, his voice faltering as he attempted to defend his actions. "I acted only out of a desire to innovate," he protested weakly, "yet innovation does not justify betrayal." Holmes' reply was measured and resolute. Innovation, when coupled with betrayal, becomes the tool of those who profit from the misfortune of others. You sought to exploit genius for personal gain, and in doing so, you became entangled in the very web you helped to weave. As the confrontation reached its zenith, the clockmaker himself stepped forward from the shadows, a figure whose presence exuded the quiet authority of a man who had mastered both time and deception. In a calm yet resonant tone, he addressed the assembly. "I designed this performance not to deceive for its own sake, but to reveal the depths of human ambition and the resilience of truth. My apparent death was a calculated gambit, a test for those who would claim to protect the sanctity of innovation. The apprentice here, whose fidelity never wavered, has proven himself worthy not only of my trust, but of the future of our craft." His words, delivered with measured cadence, silenced any lingering doubt. The apprentice, overwhelmed by relief and gratitude, managed to utter in a quiet yet heartfelt manner, "I have been a willing participant in this grand test, and I now stand vindicated." The clockmaker's reply was gentle and imbued with wisdom. "Your dedication has affirmed the belief that true artistry lies in the perseverance of integrity, even under the greatest strain." In the aftermath of this dramatic revelation, the rival conspirators found themselves unmasked and isolated. Holmes, whose mind had never rested from the challenge of unraveling the intricate tapestry of clues, meticulously ensured that every piece of evidence was documented, and that those responsible for the subterfuge faced the consequences of their actions. "Let this serve as a lesson," Holmes declared in a tone that blended both admonition and hope, "that the manipulation of truth, no matter how artfully disguised, will eventually be laid bare by the unyielding march of time." His words resonated with the assembled witnesses who, in the quiet understanding of the clockmaker's grand design, recognized that the true victory lay not in the punishment of the guilty, but in the restoration of honor and the preservation of genuine innovation. In the days that followed the public unveiling of the clockmaker's masterful ruse, the once troubled apprentice found solace in the renewed respect of his peers and the unspoken gratitude of those who had borne witness to the unmasking of deception. The clockmaker, now an enigmatic yet celebrated figure, continued to guide the future of mechanical design from behind the veil of anonymity. In private conversations that echoed with both relief and wonder, Holmes confided, "The measure of a true genius is not merely in the creations left behind, but in the ability to challenge the very nature of truth and perception. Today, we have witnessed that genius in its most sublime form." The apprentice, his voice steady with newfound resolve, responded, "I now understand that every tick, every tock was a lesson, a testament to the idea that even in the labyrinth of deceit, the light of truth cannot be extinguished." In a final act of quiet reflection, Holmes and the clockmaker exchanged words that encapsulated the journey they had undertaken. Time, the clockmaker intoned softly, is both a relentless adversary and our greatest ally. It is through its passage that we come to understand the true nature of our existence, and it is in its rhythm that we find the courage to confront even the most daunting challenges. Holmes, with a nod that conveyed both respect and admiration, replied, "Your plan, as audacious as it was, has reminded us all that the pursuit of truth is a battle fought not only with intellect, but with the steadfast conviction that justice, however veiled in mystery, will eventually prevail." Thus, as the final seconds of the investigation ticked away like the measured cadence of a well-wound clock, the tapestry of deception was unraveled, and the true legacy of the clockmaker was revealed. The case, which had once promised only sorrow and suspicion, now stood as a testament to the enduring power of ingenuity, integrity, and the unyielding quest for truth. In the quiet aftermath of the confrontation, the assembled witnesses dispersed with a renewed sense of purpose, their hearts and minds forever marked by the revelation that even the most complex riddles can be solved when one is willing to look beyond the surface. In that moment, as the echoes of the final confrontation resonated in the corridors of memory, Holmes reflected on the journey with a mixture of solemn satisfaction and quiet pride. Let it be known, he mused, that every cog, every tick of the clock was part of a symphony that ultimately celebrated the triumph of truth over deceit. The clockmaker's experiment, far from being a mere act of deception, had become a beacon of hope for those who believed in the transformative power of perseverance and wisdom. His final words, shared in the quiet intimacy of mutual respect, underscored the profound lesson of the entire ordeal. In every challenge we face, the passage of time is our most honest companion, and through it, we learn that even the deepest mysteries can be unraveled by those who dare to listen. And so, as the grand performance reached its conclusion, the legacy of the clockmaker lived on, not solely in his ingenious creations, but in the very essence of the challenge he had set forth. The apprentice, now vindicated and enlightened by the trials he had endured, stepped forward to embrace a future defined by both innovation and unwavering honor. Holmes, ever the sentinel of truth, continued his endless pursuit of knowledge, carrying with him the memory of a case that had transcended the boundaries of mortal perception and celebrated the eternal dance of time and truth. Thus ended the grand unraveling of the clockmaker's riddle, a tale where every second carried the weight of destiny and every carefully orchestrated deception gave way to a revelation as timeless as the ticking of the clocks. In the silence that followed, the world was reminded that genius, when coupled with integrity, creates a legacy that endures far beyond the confines of any mortal moment.